The opinions and views expressed by individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of this network, their group, or other organization they may be involved with.
I'm looking at myself, reflections of my mind. It's just the kind of day to leave myself behind. So gently swaying through the fairyland of love. If you'll just come with me, you'll see the beauty of Tuesday evening news. Tuesday evening
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Psychedelic Reporters for this Tuesday, June 4th, episode 112 here on the NOK Network, the video news podcast focused on psychedelic medicine being reported in mainstream media. Shout out to the guys in Dead Ringer from Kirkland Lake, Ontario for the awesome intro track, originally recorded by the Moody Blues with some customized changes for our show. I am joined by my amazing joint host, Tarra Simpson, along with the one and only Bufo Alverius, who has chosen all our stories for us. Hello, Tarra.
Well, hello, everyone, and hello, hobbies. I'd like to take a minute to introduce Bufo. He's our Sonoran desert toad or Colorado mud toad. Did you know he emits DMT from his skin? And while that sounds like fun, park rangers would like to remind everyone, please don't lick that toad. How are you, hobbies?
Oh, I am great, man. It's I don't know if anybody saw, but this weekend Jade took us. We were good. Took us to the sweet store in New Orleans, and then we got to eat some medicated cannabis for patients and sample them. We were samplers. That's how us puppets could get around how the law is.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
And then yeah, it was a great weekend. Rain, lots of rain, cleansing. And then Monday was a good day, and now it's Tuesday.
Right? Yeah. We had some rain here over the weekend as well. It's been kind of gloomy and gross, but you know how that works, right?
Yes, I find it very cleansing. I find rain, like even if it's a light rain, can boost your mental health.
Yeah. I don't like when it's dark and gloomy, but the rain, I like the smell of the fresh rain. There's a smell to it, if you know what I mean. You know, it smells earthy and clean and fresh. So yeah, I get that completely, but I want my sunshine back. I like the sun.
Oh, I hear it. So speaking about healing and whatnot, our first article comes right out of SciPost, and it says how cannabis and psilocybin might help those experiencing chronic pain, and this is by Kevin Boenke.
Yeah. So the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency announced in late April 2024 that it plans to ease federal restrictions on cannabis, reclassifying it from a Schedule I drug to the less restricted Schedule III, which includes drugs such as Tylenol with codeine, testosterone, and other anabolic steroids. This historic shift signals an acknowledgement from the promising medical value of cannabis. The move comes in tandem with growing interest in the use of psilocybin, the active component in magic mushrooms, for the treatment of depression, chronic pain, and other conditions. In 2018 and 2019, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration granted a breakthrough therapy designation to psilocybin, meant to expedite drug development, given that preliminary studies suggest that it may have substantial therapeutic value over currently available therapies for the treatment-resistant depression and major depressive disorder. Both of these developments represent a dramatic change from a long-standing federal policy around these substances that has historically criminalized their use and blocked or delayed research efforts into their therapeutic potential.
I also have a personal stake in improving chronic pain treatment. And as an assistant professor of anesthesiology and pain research, I study alternative pain management options, including cannabis psychedelics. I also have a personal stake in improving chronic pain treatment. In early 2009, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, a condition characterized by widespread pain throughout the body, sleep disturbances, and generalized sensory sensitivity. I see cannabis and psilocybin as promising therapies that can contribute to bringing that need, given that an estimated 50 million Americans have chronic pain, meaning pain that persists for 3 months or more. I want to help understand how to effectively use cannabis and psilocybin as potential tools for pain management. Wow.
Yeah, so interesting, because I also have fibromyalgia, so this is very interesting for my own purpose. Cannabis versus other pain medication. Cannabis, also known as marijuana, is an ancient medicinal plant. Cannabis-based medicines have been used for at least 5,000 years for applications such as arthritis and pain control during and after surgery. This use extended through antiquity to modern times, with contemporary cannabis-based medication for treating certain seizure disorders, promoting weight gain for HIV/AIDS related anorexia, and treating nausea during chemotherapy. As with anything you put into your body, cannabis does have health risks. Driving while high may increase risks of accidents. Some people develop cynical vomiting, while others develop motivation or dependency problems, especially with heavy users at a young age. That said, lethal overdoses from cannabis are almost unheard of. This is remarkable considering that nearly 50 million Americans use it each year. In contrast, opioids are often prescribed for chronic pain and have contributed to hundreds of thousands of overdose deaths over the past few decades. Even common pain medications like non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs such as ibuprofen causes tens of thousands of hospitalizations and thousands of deaths each year from gastrointestinal damage. Furthermore, both opioids and non-opioid pain medications have limited effectiveness for treating chronic pain. Medications used for chronic pain can provide small to moderate relief in some people, but many ultimately cause side effects that outweigh any gains.
Wow, these safety issues and limited benefit have led many people with chronic pain to try cannabis as a chronic pain treatment alternative. Indeed, in survey studies, my colleagues and I that people substituted cannabis for pain medications, often because cannabis had fewer negative side effects. However, more rigorous research on cannabis for chronic pain is needed. So far, clinical trials considered the gold standard have been short in length and focused on small numbers of people. What's more, my colleagues and I have shown that these studies employ medications and dosing regimens that are far different from consumers actually use products from state licensed cannabis dispensaries. Cannabis also causes recognizable effects such as euphoria, altered perceptions, and thinking differently. So it is difficult to conduct double blind studies. Despite these challenges, a group of cannabis and pain specialists published a proposed guideline for clinical practice in early 2024 to synthesize existing evidence and help guide clinical practice. This guideline has recommended that cannabis products be used when pain is coupled with sleep problems, muscle spasticity, and anxiety. These multiple benefits mean that cannabis could potentially help people avoid taking a separate medication for each symptom. Wow.
Yeah. Traditional hurdles to studying cannabis. Since the Controlled Substances Act was passed in 1970, the federal government has designated cannabis as a Schedule 1 substance, along with other drugs such as heroin and LSD. Possession of these drugs is criminalized, and under the federal definition, they currently have no accepted medical use with the high potential for abuse. Because of this designation and the limits placed on drug manufacturing, cannabis is very difficult to study. State and federal regulatory barriers also delay or prevent studies from being approved and conducted. For example, I can purchase cannabis from a state licensed dispensary in my hometown of Ann Arbor, Michigan. As a scientist, however, it's very challenging to legally test whether these products help pain. Reclassifying cannabis as a Schedule 3 drug has the potential to substantially open up this research landscape and help us overcome these barriers.
The emerging role of psychedelics. Psychedelics such as psilocybin-containing mushrooms occupy an early similar scientific and political landscape as cannabis. Used for thousands of years for ceremonial and healing purposes, psilocybin is also classified as a Schedule 1 drug. It can cause substantial changes in sensory perception, mood, and sense of self that can lead to therapeutic benefits. And like cannabis, psilocybin has minimal risk of lethal overdose. Clinical trials combining psilocybin with psychotherapy in the weeks before and after taking the drug report substantial improvements in symptoms of psychiatric conditions such as treatment-resistant depression and alcohol use disorders. Risks are typically psychological. A small number of people report suicidal thoughts or self-harm behaviors after taking psilocybin. Some also experience a heightened openness and vulnerability, which can be exploited by therapists and lead to abuse. These are a few published there are a few published clinical trials of psilocybin therapy for chronic pain, although many are ongoing, including a pilot study for fibromyalgia conducted by our team at the University of Michigan. This treatment may help develop a healthier relationship with their pain by accelerating greater acceptance of it and decreasing rumination, often related to negative thoughts and feeling around pain. As with cannabis, some states such as Colorado and Oregon have decriminalized psilocybin and built an infrastructure to increase accessibility to psilocybin-assisted therapy. One recent analysis suggests that if psychedelics follow a similar legalization pattern in cannabis, the majority of states with legal psychedelics between 2034 and 2037. Ooh.
Wow. Challenges ahead. These ancient yet relatively new treatments offer a unique glimpse into the messy intersection of drugs, Drugs, Medicine, and Society. The justifiable excitement about cannabis and psilocybin has led to state policies that have increased access for some people. Yet, federal criminalization and substantial barriers to scientific investigation remain. In the years ahead, I hope to contribute towards pragmatic studies that work within these difficult parameters. For example, our team developed a coaching intervention to help veterans use commercially available cannabis products more effectively to treat their pain. Coaches emphasize how judicious use can minimize side effects while maximizing benefit. Should our approach work, healthcare providers and cannabis dispensaries everywhere could use this treatment to help clients in chronic pain. Approaches like this can supplement more traditional clinical trials to help researchers determine whether these drug classes, other benefits, and whether they have comparable or less harm than current treatments. As our society connects to the rich history of healing using these ancient drugs, these proposed changes may offer safe and substantive options for the 50 million Americans living with chronic pain.
Wow, that was a good article.
Absolutely.
And I was waiting for someone to really tie the two together, and I like how this did tie the two together.
Yeah.
Our next one is going to come out of High Times. Oh wow! What time for the computer to freeze?
Always the way, eh?
Right. So you said you have fibromyalgia, and how does that help with your psilocybin as a patient taking them?
I was actually, so when I first started playing around with psilocybin, it was more for the mental health benefits from it than the pain. And what I found is it actually did help my pain. And it also started to notice that I wasn't getting as many migraines with the microdosing. And so, as I kind of dabbled around with it, I have found that absolutely it does. In a microdose even, it's effective. I wouldn't say it takes away all my pain, but it definitely, on those tougher pain days, it takes the edge off much better than an Advil, a Tylenol, a Percocet, or any of those, medications ever have. So I think more research needs to be done for sure.
I think so too, because even I felt that pain-wise that it would amplify it, and I've never really had a huge pain while I've been dosing to feel it during that time, but that would be my fear. So this article is Yale researchers to study psilocybin for PTSD mental conditions. I think that's supposed to say mental health. A study cohort will examine the efficiency of psilocybin for the treatment of issues like PTSD and addiction.
Yeah, so a pilot program on the benefits of synthetic psilocybin for mental health issues like post-traumatic stress disorder is set to begin this summer at Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. A study cohort will consist of 50 patients, mostly veterans and first responders, who are with mental health concerns like depression and addiction. Participants will take 25 milligrams of synthetic psilocybin, and after the psychedelic effects wind down, they will discuss issues and progress or lack thereof with trained therapists. Connecticut Post reports that the goal is to fulfill the need for state data that has been lacking, according to State Rep Michelle Cook. We need to have data to show there is documented proof of what the therapy does, Cook said. We know it has some incredible outcomes when it's done right, and when it's done by people that are trained in how to use it for the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder and so on. Researchers at Yale have been studying the psychological, neurobiological, and therapeutic effects of these psychedelic substances like psilocybin for decades. Using a Schedule I drug in a clinical setting creates a unique set of problems, including the inability to use insurance. Even though it's a research program, you are treating them clinically. And then in order to treat them clinically, you need to have malpractice coverage, said Yale researcher Ben Calmetti. Calmetti and his team are about to embark on a first-of-its-kind study, a pilot program at Yale.
Research on the medical benefits of psilocybin have been severely hampered due to legal restriction, Calmetti said. Only certain qualifying conditions are acceptable in this case. PTSD, for instance, is a complex issue that many people fail to treat. With veterans, they will not seek treatment right away, Calmetti said. They will start turning to alcohol and other conditions, and so that now they have a comorbidity, and that comorbidity, which really is their own way of coping, which will exclude them from the study. They are real patients who are actually suffering and who actually need help. They cannot access these medicines because they do not fit that cookie cutter profile. The impact of PTSD is hard to define as it affects multiple aspects of daily life. There is no one scale that actually captures the complexity of one's daily functional impairment. It's actually an index of several different scales, he said. And one is days missed at work, productivity, relationships, just more of daily living. And that is much more important than saying, oh, you have PTSD and symptoms improved or not. Participants will take 25 milligrams of synthetic psilocybin, enough to induce a psychedelic experience, and the therapy is patient-directed. They will be taken in comfortable space. About 6 hours later, participants will undergo a psychotherapy session. 25 milligrams will be considered a moderate dose. It's not a heroic dose necessarily, but it's a psychoactive dose for sure, Calmetti said. The non-directive supportive psychotherapy is to be done after dosing rather during the dosing. Are they also going to do a study with the real shit to see if they get the same results?
I know there are some studies that are being done through, I believe it's, don't quote me on this, but Therapsil, and there's another one that are also doing, one's doing synthetic and one's doing like actual extracted real psilocybin, and they're having really good results with that. We do know a few patients who have done both, and they prefer the real over the synthetic.
Yeah, that's why I asked, because
Yeah, and it's mainly because the difference is on the synthetic, you kind of go from 0 to 100 and then back down to 0. There's no like slight, like with the natural where you kind of go up, 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 peak, and then level off and slowly come back down. It's like you're there and you're back. And that for some people is traumatic.
Right. Well, tell us the potential benefits of it.
So the many potential health benefits of psilocybin. The Yale program for psychedelic science supports this goal with several currently active studies on psilocybin. These include studies on obsessive compulsive disorder, major depressive disorder, cluster migraines, post-traumatic headaches, and migraines. Calmetti is working on several of them. A 2022 report published by a working group under the direction of the Connecticut Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services was clear about potential for psilocybin in therapeutic medicine. Even people who don't necessarily intend to gain benefits for medical health from psilocybin are still benefiting, a separate study suggests. A study published last September found that using psilocybin outside a clinical setting was associated with mental health benefits, including decreases in anxiety and depression. The research, which was published September in the journal Frontiers in Psychiatry, studied nearly 3,000 people who reported on their experience taking psilocybin mushrooms. To conduct the study, which is reportedly the largest study of psilocybin in a naturalistic, non-clinical setting, researchers spent 2 years collecting data from 2,833 participants who planned to take psilocybin for the purposes of self-exploration. Most participants were college-educated white men in the United States who had previous experience taking psychedelic drugs. The study participants were asked to fill out five surveys as part of the research. The first survey was completed 2 weeks prior to the psilocybin experience, which usually consisted of ingesting dried mushrooms and again on the day before the planned psychedelic trip. The remaining surveys were taken 1 to 3 days after the experience, 2 to 4 weeks after, and 2 to 4 months after taking the psilocybin. After analyzing data from surveys, researchers determined that participants reported long-lasting reductions in anxiety, depression, alcohol misuse, neuroticism, and burnout. Additionally, the participants reported improvement in cognitive flexibility, emotional regulation, spiritual well-being, and extroversion. The new research aims to add to the body of knowledge of what is known about the effects of psilocybin. That's a cool article. I like that one.
Yeah, thanks, Ben Adams, for writing this. This was a good, yeah. So the interesting thing with that is like you said, the studies of psilocybin, of the naturality versus the synthesized, and if with a couple places doing it, you're going to get two different results just alone because it's two different places doing it.
Right.
So then to mix in the naturality and the synthetic, I just don't want any argument when these proofs and these studies are done. I don't want any what ifs, because then it just takes us more into the realm of, just speculation.
Well, and I think too, you're going to get a different demographic in each study of patients, both in the synthetic and the natural, who have different backgrounds and are different individuals. And you're going to get some varying responses, whether they were in either study, right? So it's kind of hard to gauge. I think the biggest gauge would be is there benefit? Are people benefiting? If they're benefiting from the natural, cool, stay with the natural. If you don't want the natural and you benefit from the synthetic, cool, great on you. I prefer the natural. Once you start messing with things in a lab, I don't know, it just doesn't seem the same to me.
Right. Well, and we're natural remedy world nowadays. So
yeah, absolutely.
This next article comes from the Jefferson Public Radio, and this is First Responders, Veterans Hail Benefits of Psychedelic Drugs as California Debates Legalization. And this is from Bernard Wolfson. And this, you guys are going to see this beautiful man right here. And Dave Hodges is the founder and pastor of the Church of Ambrosia, which considers magic mushrooms a sacrament. Hodges lays the effects of psilocybin are profoundly spiritual because they allow people to connect to their soul. He's a beautiful being. Look at that.
I know. I absolutely love that guy. I've had the pleasure of interviewing him on Open Your Eye at least once or twice. Just a fantastic outlook, and he's helping so many people, and I love that he keeps making the news. I know a lot of people would be like, oh, he's in the news again, controversial, but controversy creates conversation, and conversation is what needs to happen in this realm right now. So it's just super cool that he keeps making the news. Good for him. So abundant research has shown that psychedelics have the potential to produce long-lasting relief from depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, addiction, and other mental health conditions. But experts warn that these powerful drugs are not for everyone, as California considers a bill to legalize them for therapeutic use. Wade Trammell recalls the time he and his fellow firefighters responded to a highway crash in which a beer truck rammed into a pole, propelling the truck's engine through the cab and into the driver's abdomen. The guy was up there screaming and squirming. Then the cab caught on fire. Trammell said, "I couldn't move him. He burned to death right there in my arms." Memories of that gruesome death and other traumatic incidences that he's had to witness as a firefighter in Mountain View, California, didn't seem to bother Trammell for the first 7 years after he retired in 2015. But then he started crying a lot, drinking heavy, and losing sleep. At first, he didn't understand why, but he would later come to suspect that he was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. After therapy failed to improve his mental well-being, he heard about the potential benefits of psychedelic drugs to help first responders with post-traumatic stress disorder. That's really cool.
Last July, Trammell went on a retreat in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, organized by the Siren Project, a nonprofit that advocates the use of psychedelics and other alternative medicines to help first responders. He took psilocybin mushrooms and the next day, another psychedelic derived from the toxic secretions of the Sonoran desert toad. The experience, he says, produced an existential shift in the way he thinks of the terrible things he saw as a firefighter. All that trauma and all that crap I saw and dealt with, it's all the very temporary, and everything goes back into the universe as energy, Trammell says. Abundant research has shown that psychedelics have the potential to produce lasting relief from depression, anxiety, PTSD, addiction, and other mental health conditions. Many universities and the United States have programs researching psychedelics, but experts warn that these drugs are not for everybody, especially those with a history of psychosis and cardiovascular problems. Most psychedelic drugs are prohibited under federal law, but California has soon join a growing number of local and state governments allowing their use. The Senate Bill 1012, which is working its way through the California legislature, would allow the therapeutic use of psilocybin, mescaline, MDMA, the active ingredient in ecstasy, and dimethyltryptamine, the active ingredient in ayahuasca, a plant-based psychoactive tea. The drugs could be purchased and ingested in approval locations under the supervision of facilitators who would undergo training and be licensed by a new state board. The facilitators would need a professional health credential to qualify. Wow.
That's very cool. The bill, co-sponsored by Senator Scott Wiener, D. San Francisco, Assembly Member Marie Waldron of San Diego, and several other lawmakers, follows last year's unsuccessful effort to decriminalize certain psychedelics for personal use. Governor Gavin Newsom, a Democrat, vetoed the bill, although he extolled psychedelics as an exciting frontier and asked for new legislation with regulated treatment guidelines. Weiner said the new bill was drafted by Newsom's request in mind. It is supported by some veterans and first responder groups and opposed by numerous law enforcement agencies. One potential roadblock is that the state's budget deficit, which is pegged at between $38 billion and $73 billion, Newsom said legislative leaders may choose not to launch a new initiative when they are cutting existing programs. That is something we'll certainly grapple with, Weiner said. The legislation which is making its way through communities would require a new board to begin accepting facilitator license applications in April of 2026. The system would look somewhat like the one in Oregon, which allow the use of psilocybin mushrooms under the guidance of state licensed facilitators at psilocybin service centers. And like Oregon, California would not allow for the personal use or possession of psychedelics. The drugs would have to be purchased and consumed at authorized locations. Interesting.
Colorado, following the passage of a ballot initiative in 2022, is creating a system of regulated healing centers where people will be able to legally consume psilocybin mushrooms and other psychedelics under the supervision of licensed facilitators. Colorado's law allows for the personal use and possession of a handful of psychedelics. In California, the cities of Oakland, San Francisco, Berkeley, Santa Cruz, and Arcata have effectively decriminalized many psychedelics, as have many other cities around the United States, including Ann Arbor, Michigan, Cambridge, Massachusetts, Detroit, Minneapolis, Seattle, and Washington, D.C. Psychedelics such as psilocybin, ayahuasca, and peyote have been used for thousands of years by indigenous populations in Latin America and the current day United States, and some non-indigenous groups use these substances for a spiritual way. The Church of Ambrosia, with locations in San Francisco and Oakland, considers psilocybin mushrooms, also known as magic mushrooms, a sacrament. Mushrooms affect the border between this world and the next and allow people to connect to their soul. This says David Hodges, founder of and pastor of the church. Hodges was behind an unsuccessful attempt to get an initiative on the California ballot this year that would have decriminalized the possession and use of mushrooms. He hopes it will qualify for the 2026 ballot. The pending California legislation is rooted in studies showing psychedelics can be powerful agents in mental health treatment. Giles Grab, a psychiatry professor in University of California, Los Angeles School of Medicine, who has researched psychedelics for nearly 40 years, led a study that found synthetic psilocybin could help reduce end-of-life anxiety in patients and advanced stage cancer. Grab says that MDMA is good for couples in counseling because it facilitates communication and puts people in touch with their feelings. He conducted research in Brazil that showed ayahuasca used in a religious context helped people overcome alcoholism. Wow.
Wow, eh? But Grobe warns that the unsupervised use of psychedelics can be dangerous and says people should undergo mental and medical health screenings before ingesting them. There are cases of people going off the rails. It's a small minority, but it can happen. And when it does happen. It can be very frightening, Grob said. Ken Finn, past president of the American Board of Pain Medicine, says psychedelics have a number of side effects, including elevated blood pressure, high heart rate, and vomiting, and that they can trigger persistent psychosis in a small minority of users. Legal drugs also pose risks, he says, but we have much better guardrails on things like prescriptions and over-the-counter medications. He also worries about product contamination and says manufacturers would need to be tightly regulated. Another potential problem is health equity. Since insurance would not cover these sessions, at least not initially, they would likely attract people with disposable income. A supervised psilocybin journey in Oregon, for example, can cost more than $2,500. Many people who have experienced psychedelics corroborate the research results. Ben Kramer, a former Marine who served in Afghanistan and now works as a psilocybin facilitator in Beaverton, Oregon, says a high-dose mushroom session altered his worldview. I relived the first time I was ever shot in Afghanistan. He says, I was there. I had this overwhelming love and compassion for the guy who was shooting at me, who was fighting for what he believed in, just like I was. Another characteristic of psychedelic therapy is that just a few sessions can potentially produce lasting effects. Tremel, the retired firefighter, hasn't taken psychedelics since that retreat in Mexico 10 months ago. I just felt like I kind of got what I needed, he says. I've been fine ever since. Wow, isn't that something?
Yeah, I like this article. It's good because it shows the fight in California, man. And,
Yeah.
Other states have started seeing what they're doing, and the blockades and the roadblocks that they come to face, they almost can confront them before them happening because of what's going on with the governor and other.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's medication time.
Absolutely. It's time for us to pay some bills. So stay tuned for a word from some of our sponsors, and then we'll be back with more articles that Bufo has chosen, making mainstream media news.
Back in 4 minutes and 20 seconds here on the Psychedelic Reporters on NOK Network.
Psychedelic Tuesdays on NOK Network. Tune in at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Psychedelic Reporters. Bufo Alverius is scouring the newswires for stories being reported in the mainstream media on the psychedelic front and passing them on to hobbies, puppets, and Tarra Simpson so they can bring them to you, our listeners, in this 60-minute video news podcast.
Tuesday evening news.
Join us for Tuesday evening news each week at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for all your news and information from the world of psychedelic medicine. Follow and subscribe to NOK Network on our webpage, social media, and streaming sites, including YouTube and Rumble.
Peace, news, and views on NOK Network. Patients everywhere advocating cannabis evolution with Kim Cooper and Sir Steve Oak. Joint hosts interview people in the grassroots and corporate cannabis space across North America and beyond. Sit down with patients, entrepreneurs, lawyers, doctors, and others share their journey with this medicinal plant. So join us for Peace, News, and Views. Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, where all consumption is medicinal consumption on NOKNetwork.com. Follow and subscribe to NOK Network on social media and streaming sites including Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble.
Put it all away for 30 minutes a day on IWK. The IWK 710 Daily Sesh is a virtual gathering where consumers meet up for a toke and some laughs at 7 p.m. Eastern nightly. Originally aired on InfoWikim social media pages, the IWK 710 Daily Sesh is now also podcasted on NOK Network. Rotating joint hosts bring you a variety of content during this 30-minute virtual smoke sesh. Take a break from the stresses in life and put it all away for 30 minutes a day on IWK. Podcasted nightly at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on NOK Network.
Hey, dudes and dudettes. Enjoy the show, man.
And we're back from our medication session live on Psychedelic Reporters here on NOK Network.
We have another set of stories coming at you from the realm of psychedelic medicine, so let's get at it. Usually this is where I already have the next article up, but I smoked a little more than I thought I would. So yeah.
Stoner problems.
Yeah. Well, it's a Tuesday night, just kind of unwinding.
Exactly.
So, okay, this cool article right here comes out of Marijuana Moment, and Atlanta could add psilocybin and ketamine to city workers' healthcare plans under pending resolution. And this is by Ben Adler.
Yeah, a new proposal from an Atlantic City Council member would direct municipal office officials to explore the pros and cons of adding coverage for psilocybin and ketamine as mental health treatments to the city's healthcare plan for firefighters, police, and other government workers. Traditional treatments for mental illness such as depression and anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and others have shown limited effectiveness for some individuals, leading to a need for exploring alternative therapeutic options. The legislation, which is currently being sponsored by 11 of the councilor's 16 member states, recent research has demonstrated the potential of efficacy of alternative therapies such as ketamine-assisted therapy and psilocybin-assisted therapy in treating various mental health conditions, offering promising results where other treatments have failed. The resolution's lead sponsor, Council Member Liliana Baharkari, has said city workers deserve access to a broad range of mental health services.
We should be offering our employees and especially our first responders, who are expected to be superhuman, the same amount of grace in providing them with a tool. Where did I go? First responders, super grace with the tool to essentially overcome this issue. The lawmaker recently told Axios. Bakatari said the impetus for including the drugs on public employers' health plans was meeting at West Virginia police officer who witnessed a fellow officer die of suicide, later used ketamine to treat his PTSD. The lawmaker said they are not aware of any other city governments that have looked into covering psilocybin or ketamine treatment. The resolution from Bakatari would request the Atlanta's Human Resources Department to explore the feasibility of adding coverage. Wow, that would be so awesome. For ketamine therapy, psilocybin therapy, and other therapies for mental and the city's employee benefits during its round of negotiations. The city would further be asked to conduct a thorough review of the scientific evidence, safety considerations, regulatory landscape, liability, cost implications, and applicability based upon one job's classification to incorporate such alternative therapies as a part of the employee's benefits package. Finding of the review would be due to the City Council on December 10th of this year. Nearly 2 years ago, Atlanta leaders considered a separate measure, but Qatari filed to locally decriminalize a broad range of psychedelics, including plants, fungi, spores, and other botanical compounds, though it did not ultimately become law. That same year, a George House committee met at the state level to separately talk about therapeutic potential of psychedelics like psilocybin to treat serious mental health conditions that commonly afflict military veterans. As for workplace coverage of substances like psilocybin and ketamine, it's a growing area of interest among employers and healthcare companies. Holy cow.
Right? Yeah, the nonprofit Athena, which calls itself the first and only licensed provider of psychedelic health plans, announced last year it would cover both ketamine treatment nationwide and psilocybin in states where it's permitted. Athena previously worked with soap company Dr. Bronner's to offer psychedelic assisted therapy to workers through their employee health plans. We have had our eye on the potential benefit of psilocybin therapy since we founded our company, Dan Rome, Athena's co-founder and chief medical officer, said late last year. We were very encouraged by published results as well as what we hear from practicing therapists, and we are confident that this brings an important new option for combating mental illness. Athena has previously said that its services will expand further to include therapies with other substances such as MDMA as they are approved. At the federal level, meanwhile, a top U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs official said earlier this month that there's an unstoppable narrative in support of advancing psychedelic medicine with a combining of compelling personal stories of recovery and robust clinical data from studies he's hoping to expand upon. He has also said bipartisan acceptance of psychedelics has surpassed that of marijuana in Congress. The Food and Drug Administration is currently considering a new drug application for MDMA-assisted therapy for the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder. The review has been granted priority status with the public hearing scheduled for next month. While both MDMA and psilocybin remain Schedule I controlled substances, they both have been granted breakthrough therapy status by the FDA. The House Veterans Affairs Committee also passed a bill at the beginning of the month that would require VA to notify Congress if any psychedelics are added to its formulary of covered prescription drugs. President Joe Biden also signed into law a bipartisan measure to provide funding to the Department of Defense to conduct clinical trials into the therapeutic potential of certain psychedelics for active duty military members. And that was enacted under the 2024 National Defense Authorization Act.
In March, congregational appropriations leaders are also unveiled a spending package that contains language providing $10 million to facilitate the psychedelic studies. In January, Virginia separately issued a request for applications to conduct in-depth research on the use of psychedelics to treat PTSD and depression. And in October, Virginia launched a new podcast about the future of veteran health care. And the first episode of that series focuses on the healing potential of psychedelics. FDA officials also recently joined scientists at a public meeting on next steps for conducting research to develop psychedelic medicines. Man, this was a good read again.
Absolutely. And we've seen where in other articles in past episodes where they're looking at, could this be something that could be covered under a healthcare benefit, right? Just as any other medication. So it's cool that companies are taking initiative to start that ball rolling.
Well, and the more other states are going to do this, as the other states pop up, just like cannabis, they're going to already then implement these things into the bill as the state, votes, so they don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Absolutely.
So our last article is going to come out of Hoodline, okay? And this actually was a good read. It's Scottsdale scientists trip into the future. Arizona leads 2.75 million psychedelic therapy study on magic mushrooms. And this is written by Taylor Johnson.
Yeah, so Arizona is taking a trip to the forefront of psychedelic research at Scottsdale Research Institute, gears up to lead a groundbreaking study on psilocybin mushrooms, also known as magic mushrooms. According to a report from ABC 15, SRI will measure the therapeutic effects of these mushrooms in treating life-threatening illnesses, marking the first time the DEA approved clinical trial is using natural self-grown psilocybin, combating afflictions from chronic pain to post-traumatic stress disorder. This study carries promising potential for those grappling with severe health issues. In a testament to community effort, military veterans, firefighters, and individuals battling terminal diseases propelled the grant's approval by the Arizona legislature, securing 2.7 million of the 5 million kitty dedicated to psilocybin research. Arizona is at the forefront of clinical research, leading the change in exploring innovative treatment for mental health and chronic pain. Nicole Nichols, SRI Foundation president, alluded to in a statement relayed by the Business Journal.
Oh wow! Can you read that next paragraph? My computer.
Yeah. The study structure is a comparative one with a two-part treatment plan, which has a group digesting the mushrooms and others taking a placebo. SRI, operating out of Scottsdale, plans to cultivate their own mushrooms and scrutinize the effects on the emotional states of patients with various illnesses. Sue Sisley, MD, president of SRI, highlighted the uniqueness of the research, telling the Business Journal, whole psilocybin mushrooms with all the molecules working together could offer superior healing potential than one synthetic molecule.
While the study's initial participant count is pegged at 24 patients, there's potential for expansion. Spanning a time frame of 4 to 6 months per patient, researchers are hopeful the finding will underpin psilocybin's medical benefits, and perhaps by a stepping stone to legal medical art in the U.S. Use in the U.S. The pursuit is not just limited to psilocybin. SSRI is also examining other psychoactive plants like cannabis to gauge medical efficacy. The illnesses in the spotlight for this research include, among other conditions, post-traumatic stress disorder, symptoms associated with long COVID, and obsessive compulsive disorder. Wow.
Right? Isn't that something?
Oh, man. That was a good article.
Absolutely.
So Arizona just legalized cannabis, I think we're in the second year now, and for them to basically now take, as she said, the forefront into research I think Texas, though, is doing a research program, even though they're not legal.
Yeah, I do believe there's research happening everywhere right now, even in the AU, right? Or the EU, which traditionally is very anti-drug. So there's so many studies, and all of them are showing such amazing promise in all of these areas. So
Thank you for joining us here on Psychedelic Reporters on NOK Network, and for tuning in to our video podcast at NOK Network's Rumble and YouTube pages, as well as other social media sites.
we really hope you've enjoyed our update on mainstream media coverage of psychedelic medicine advancements from around the globe.
Many thanks to our sponsors and to my joint hosts, Tarra Simpson, and to Bufo Alverius for choosing the stories, and to you, our listeners, for joining each week on Psychedelic Tuesday. Let's hear from Dead Ringer again from Kirkland Lake on our way out. Good night.
Bye.
Looking at myself, reflections of my mind. It's just the kind of day to leave myself behind. So gently swaying through the fairyland of love. If you'll just come with me, you'll see the beauty of